the large meteor crater that's there along Interstate 40 in the Arizona desert. It's pretty big too. I forget how big they said. It's like, I don't know, a half mile or something across. I'm sure you can look it up. It would be under Meteor Crater, Arizona, literally. Probably find it right off. It's one of the largest intact meteor craters on Earth, as far as I understand, that they know a meteor made it. And I guess because it's in the desert where it's relatively dry, it's been preserved or unchanged for many, many years. And I don't know that they link it specifically to any particular extinction, although they probably do know about when it happened. And it's big enough of a crater that it probably put quite a bit of dust into the atmosphere and maybe caused at least local cooling temperatures, but I don't know that it had any global effect. I don't know that it was big enough to contribute to any sort of an ice age or any other climatic changes, nor to any extinctions of any sort. So it's likely as not was just a big explosion when it landed and caused mostly effects on the local area there. But it was some thousands of years ago, before recorded history. And I think I read or saw somewhere a sign that said it's about 5 miles off of the interstate. So when you get to that point of the interstate, you can actually look over toward it and see that there is some sort of a ridge, the actual walls of the crater. And at the time I didn't have any real ride there or back or anything, and I just took off walking across the desert straight for it. Figured it'd be easier just to walk cross country straight across the desert than to follow the road. Although I'd probably been more lucky with getting a ride if possible had I followed the road. And there at the shop you actually have to buy a ticket to go up and look over the edge. I don't know, it was something like $10 or something. But I didn't have any money, and I just spent, I know it must have been probably a couple hours walking through the desert to get to the crater, to look over inside the crater. I wanted to see inside the crater. They had a real neat, in the gift shop they had a real neat little model. You could kind of see proportionally how big the crater was, and they had a little model of the gift shop and little model cars down in the parking lot. All gave you a sense of how big it was and what it must be like, but it's not the same as looking over into the crater. And so when I got there to the gift shop, I asked the guy, I said, can I go up and look over in the crater? And he said, well, sure, but it's a $10 ticket or whatever. I don't know, maybe $5, but whatever it was more than what I had. Ticket to look over inside, it's going to cost you. You have to buy the ticket. Then you can go up to the little platform they provided and look over into the crater. And I told him, I said, you know, I just spent, I don't know, an hour or a couple hours walking across the desert to get here, and I don't have any money. You know, can you just let me go up? And the guy, he kind of shook his head, or basically said, you got to buy a ticket. But then he like almost immediately walked away, and like, I don't know if he was going to the back room for something or go talk to his manager, or I think maybe a group did show up and he might have gone, led them, tour guided them to the platform or whatever. But I looked around and he just wasn't there, and I didn't notice where he'd gone, so I didn't know for sure if he was up on the platform or where he was. And I thought, well, maybe he's just turning his back. Maybe he was going to let me slip upstairs and take a peek and then be on my way, which would have been great. But I guess I felt like, well, it wouldn't be right, and they can't let everybody see it free and support the place, and I don't know, I felt bad, like I probably shouldn't do it. And right at that moment, this group came in, and it was about 3 or 4 or 5 people, and one of them looked a lot like my father, and then a couple of them looked like they might have been his sisters, older women that, and I didn't look at them real closely. You know how you just kind of glance up and notice somebody and you kind of look away so they don't feel embarrassed. It's all that territorial stuff. You don't stare at people. And wasn't particularly interested in running into them there if they had decided to take a go west vacation or if they were looking for me. Looking back, it seems stupid. Why didn't I go up and look at the crater? I mean, the worst they might have done is just sent me away. It's not likely that it was a crime enough that anybody get arrested or anything. I mean, I don't know. $10. But I didn't get to see into the crater, and I didn't determine if that was my parents. I later learned that they had taken a west adventure, and it was with his sisters, my father and his sisters, and my mom. They'd gotten in a van and all gone, I don't know, through New Mexico and maybe Arizona. I believe at a similar time, but it may have been a little different. It may have been like maybe a year later or something. It was odd. It was like I never got anything straight answer from them whether they were there or not, or if that could have been them. The chances were so unlikely, and yet, I don't know. And if I had said something to them, and even if they weren't my parents, they might would have bought me a ticket, so I probably sort of killed my chances of seeing the crater just by ducking away and not investigating that any further. I guess I just shied away from it. Story of my life. Then people say, Alan, but you went out west with no money in your pocket and you hitchhiked and you were living like, you know, hand to mouth and all this stuff was so brave, and how could you do all that? And then you wimp out on going to see the crater or not investigating if that was your parents, or, you know, it's silly. I guess we obsess over things we don't accomplish, and the things that we do accomplish often don't seem so incredibly heroic or magnificent as it's just something you did as a series of decisions you made, and you went from point A to point B, and this is just how you ended up. You went from here to there, and I guess that's what a lot of my trip was. A lot of my life is just a series of decisions that you went from point A to point B, and here you are. But that was kind of neat. It was a neat adventure. Interesting to walk across a desert and just be that sort of self-dependent. Like if I couldn't get a ride there, I'd just walk over there, and I walked over there. So there was accomplishments and such. But,